there's no surprises here. Everybody knows this show. And so the payoff comes from living up to expectations. So right here, it's probably pretty clear that they are building to a moment. I've heard the moment they're building to here referred to as the golden climax. Welcome, my name is Robert Sanchez. I'm the martial arts musician. In today's video, I'm gonna react to the Phantom Regiment Drum and Bugle Corps from 2021. Now, if you're in the martial arts world, you may not know what Drum and Bugle Corps is, but it's a really cool and exciting thing. So if you're familiar with marching band, this is marching band at the absolute highest level. Because marching band is where my background is, and it's where I learned how to perform, how to program a show, how to appeal to an audience, and these guys are absolute artists at it. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe for more martial arts musician content. I'm going to be doing a series of reaction videos, as well as posting some other stuff that I gather from tournaments and some educational stuff going to teach you how to perform better as a martial arts musician. So in the summer of 2021, people were looking for a little bit of normal. And so this organization really did an outstanding job of playing to that by bringing back a crowd favorite show, by doing something that people would enjoy. And you're going to see here kind of how awesome this was. So let's get into it. So this is a very traditional thing. Drum major salute, always a big part of what you get in any drum corps show. So this is very similar to the idea of bowing to the judges here. Obviously you have an announcer.
Regiment.
Love that, looking at the audience, making eye contact. You know, when your audience is so far away from you like that, that can be a little harder. Certainly in martial arts, our audience is right there, and that can also be hard too. So again, this was a show originally done in 2003 by this same group. And to kind of give some context here, we are fall of 2021, really coming out of COVID. So this was an extremely popular show the first time they did it. And what's interesting to note about this is that the majority of the people in this audience have seen that show and have seen this show. So a lot of times in marching band, we're gonna start off with fast and loud, you know, kind of like throwing that big trick right in the beginning of a form. But in this case, we're actually showing off our good quality sound. Something to think about, you know, you open up a form, show those good stances and strikes. Now here's your first big moment. Just something about that you might have seen while they were doing, you know, their big loud moment. They were moving their bodies. They were doing different body work. And that's become a very popular thing in marching band, layering your body. So you're doing something with your lower body, your mid body, your upper body. And if you think about that in terms of doing a form, you have different parts of your body have different responsibilities. And so having that awareness is something that as a musician, particular in the marching arts, that's what you have to train for. And so for me personally, I feel as though I was more prepared for martial arts because of having a background in marching band. So for all you bandos out there that have done marching band, this video is really going to help you connect some of those dots for sure. So now we'll transition into something different musical. And you want to create contrast, and that's really the whole thing that you want to look for when programming anything in a performance. You want different sections to contrast with each other. And I even think about this in terms of, when I do all 4 creative and extreme events, I don't want all 4 music tracks to sound the same. I want them to contrast. I think that's important, and I think that matters. And I think whether you are actively getting rewarded for that or not, it does influence how people react to you. So very commonly in this point, you'd be showing off different section features. Now watch the body layering. Tossing swords, we know what that's about. So we have dancers, we have rifles, we have sabers, we have flags. Spinning a flag is very similar to spinning a bow staff. It's probably a little harder in some respects because you have the big flag. For all you Team Sync people out there, you can probably relate to the color guard especially. You won't see people scratch their nose or touch their face or things like that. They're on stage, they're performing from the second they get out on the field, and even before in some cases. You go to some of these competitions of, let's say somebody's doing a scary show, and you'll interact with the guard in the concourse, and they're still in character. It's really great. Everybody loves a drum line. That's why we see a lot of drum features. So one thing about the technique that they use to move, marching band members do something called a roll step. And the simplest explanation is, if you've ever been in McDonald's or a fast food restaurant and you have the big tray of food and you're trying to carry that food and not spill anything, you walk a certain way to do that. And that's what the musicians are doing too. They're walking in a certain way so that when they're playing, when you get that sound, da, that you don't hear, da, you don't hear their feet. And so you want to talk about having an awareness in performance. That can be something to think about too, if you want your body to move a certain way. And so if you have any of this performance background, these are things to think about and draw on when thinking about any sort of performance of form or weapon in particular. I like the way that they'll toss up their swords or their rifles, and they'll do something underneath and then they'll catch it. I think a lot of times in extreme, we throw, and sometimes we do that. I think we'll start seeing more of that. Now, there's a couple performance qualities that you can take away from this. If you're playing in a symphony or if you're playing a solo orchestra hall, there's going to be some nuance to the performance that might differ each time, and we call that interpretation, right? Now, they're using interpretation in drum corps too, but it is, and this is going to relate more to the way that we might perform a form or weapon. It's programmed, meaning we're doing it the same way every time. So there's more intention behind the interpretation, and we're not always making it up on the fly in a marching band type setting. And a big part of the reason for that is timing. We need to keep 150 people in this case in time and doing it together, spread all over a field inside a stadium. This is a dome stadium in Indianapolis. And in order to do that, they have to they have to be predictable. They have to do things the same way. Now, one of the main themes of this performance, you may remember I mentioned earlier that most of the people that are watching this have seen it before. And yet you're going to notice towards the end of the performance, people are rising to their feet. They're going crazy in appreciation. And the performers are echoing that sense of appreciation. That's a big one. You do something really well, you stand there and own it and look good and shout loud or whatever it is. But there's no surprises here. Everybody knows this show. And so the payoff comes from living up to expectations, not so much being unpredictable. So there's something to be said about meeting expectations rather than trying to exceed them and just meeting them really, really well. And that's one of the things that goes on here with this performance. There's also an emotional aspect to understanding context, connecting with the different communities that are involved. And that'll be important. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we keep going. This next section here is the ballad section. So we talked about contrast. This is called the Lord's Prayer. It has a sort of ethereal ballad-like thing, and I want you to listen when the whole band plays the long note, and they're going to cut it off real quick, and you're going to hear the echo in the stadium. The people that created the show also knew how long the audience might applaud and wrote their show so that nothing really significant happened while the audience was applauding, but they also didn't stop and wait for that applause. So if you have moments in your form where you know people are going to react, that's something to think about. All right, here we go with Lord's Prayer. See, now they'll stop. Not one of them moves. Some of the different instruments there. So one interesting change, when they did this show in 2003, you had to be all acoustic. Now they can put microphones on all those instruments so you can hear them better. So you hear more of the detail. And so because this show is a rewrite of that, they were able to make some changes that brought out certain sounds. And those are your baritones and tubas, those big shoulder cannons. That's the marching version of a tuba. Not a sousaphone, it's a tuba. No trombones in drum corps. It's difficult to march while doing the slide thing, and because of how visual they are, they're not using it. So trombone players are playing baritone. You hear that echo? Now, the electronics actually helped him with some of that because you had a synthesizer, a keyboard player playing that and also releasing it. And so you can program reverb and delay in order to highlight that. But the point is that that sound that you heard after everyone stopped playing was just as planned as any of the sounds that they made while playing. And so you want to think about big details. That would have been probably a top 5 moment that they would have planned. You know, if we're going to have 5 moments in the show, that's going to be one of them. And as small, little nuanceical as that seems, that's a very big deal, and it shows how good that group sounds. Look at the crowd. Meeting expectations. Now, speaking of that, this next section's really going to get you there. But part of what I want to mention as we're watching this transition here is the connection with the community. And in this case, this is the greater community. This is the whole drum corps and marching band world. We were all stifled during this time, during 2020, 2021. We weren't able to do these things, these activities. And these moments right here maybe save this activity, not just for them, but for all of us. And so, I don't know that a creative or extreme form is ever going to have, or a traditional form is ever going to have that significance for the greater community, but maybe for an individual, someone coming back for an injury, somebody who just lost a family member that's going to a major competition. So never underestimate that ability to connect, whether it's you or the people around you. So right here, it's probably pretty clear that they are building to a moment. I've heard the moment they're building to here referred to as the golden climax. Here it comes. Look at the crowd. Now, this ending here is kind of a signature of this particular group. Loud and fast, kind of part of the formula. That audience is going to get up again. Particularly right here. We get this tight little form. Some of them will kneel down. They'll make their symbol. That's the symbol of their group here. Look at the performers here. They're gassed. Look at her. She understands. She gets it. And that's a great leader right there, showing appreciation for her group, acknowledging her audience.
Direction of David Warren. Regiment.
Now, what's absolutely beautiful about this particular performance is that it wasn't a competition. So this was truly for the joy of it. And that's not something you're always going to see. So there are a lot of takeaways that we can take from this, but let me give you a couple that I think are truly important. First off, all of the audience reaction was intentional. But every time the audience stood and cheered, that was a moment created by the designers of this show where that was supposed to happen. So when you're creating forms or when you're performing traditional forms, know where those moments are, not necessarily for the audience to applaud, but for the judges and anybody watching you to take it in. Number two, if you do something big, show a sense of achievement. But every time they make those tosses and they catch, you can see that just their head pops up just that little bit, like, yeah, I got this. That was so great. Show that to your judges, especially if it's in character for what you're performing. Lastly, meet expectations. It's not about exceeding expectations. Even if you're trying to set the bar for yourself, there are things that we want to see. Do those things. Give the people what they want. Especially if you have a following, if you're one of the top performers in there, if there's a move that you do, or if there's something that's your signature, do it. If you notice that there's something that you're doing that's getting a great reaction, do it more. Give people what they want. And I promise you, you'll get rewarded. There's a lot more things that you can learn from watching marching band and drum corps, but one of the things that music can teach us, the best written music is designed to take us on a ride. It's designed to take us on a trip. I hope you enjoyed this reaction. I do plan on doing some others. Let's get out there and perform.